Um, Happy Friday, and welcome to this week's episode of On My Desk, On My Mind, my weekly show. It's been 3 weeks now, so it's officially weekly, where I share some of the most interesting developments in AI, technology, and some other things that I've found during the week. We're going to jump right into things. Thought I'd start with a fun topic today. I'll see if everyone else finds it fun, but let me go ahead and play this and we can discuss it. I definitely encourage you to check out the rest of that video. It's a TikTok by McKay Williamson. He's sort of an art critic, and he's discussing the work there of David Schauder, if I've got that correctly pronounced. And yeah, I think it's a really good video. And it really gives an interesting framing to some of the questions that people have been asking about how can AI art be art. I think McKay's framework is really helpful for making that assessment. And I think one thing which I think I've always said, and he echoes there, is that art is about conversation. So not as long, but if a piece is in conversation with its themes, the ideas is exploring, as well as previous art movements, other artists, other forms of expression, that is very much a persuasive argument that it is art. But yeah, as I said, I definitely encourage you to check out that video, check out some of his other videos. I don't think he's done too much on AI art, but he looks at different um, art forms and manifestations of art and applies his analysis to them. So I thought we'd kick off the show with that. Is AI art art? In that case, it kind of seems to meet the bar, but I'd be interested to know your perspective as well. Next up, we have a product. Oh no, not product release. We have a funding raise by Hedra. Hedra is a company that I've been keeping an eye on. There are many use cases that I have personally around kind of apps and different things that I want to build that depend on a kind of moving avatar. And so Hedra is definitely a really interesting company for me. Let me go ahead and play this video. So yeah, I just wanted to share kind of the video itself, the news of the round, but also the news. Well, no, also just kind of the example of the avatar there. I think the framing from the CEO about he was too busy to make um, the video is a bit funny, but I think the point still stands that these characters are able to do things that we haven't really been able to do easily before. Obviously, you could always kind of animate a character, but obviously that would take lots of resources. Um, I think this probably feeds into the theme I have around AI democratizing different forms of creativity and different things like that. So, Hydra, I call it Hedra, I still prefer Hedra, but Hydra is definitely a company to keep an eye on. Let's move on to this story. Okay, I found this really interesting. So, I I've been kind of really interested in chain of reasoning, chain of thinking. It's the way that AI models or AI assistants show you what they're thinking before they actually give you the output or the answer. And Ethan Mollick says something really interesting here. Don't trust reasoning chains to show you what the AI is thinking. It is designed to be useful in helping solve the problem. It is not truthful. That doesn't mean it can't be useful for diagnosing issues with prompting, but don't take it at face value or expect accuracy. And I don't know. I feel like I've noticed that. I think I use Claude most often, and when I look at sometimes the the reasoning chain, it does feel, for want of a better word, performative. It somewhat looks like it what I would want it to be thinking, or what it would want me to think it's thinking, as opposed to maybe the resources is actually accessing. Now that's not to say that I believe that they're necessarily untruthful or deceptive, but I think as with all AI, anything an AI says, any text it gives, any words it gives you are very much predictive, and that's something we'll come on to in a little bit. The This is token generation. This is not sense making, if I can put it in that way. So just as the answer that the AI gives you is one token being predicted or multiple tokens being predicted, the chain of reasoning, the reasoning output is predictive in and of itself. So I definitely kind of understand where Ethan is coming from here, and I think it's important. I think it's important to share because we shouldn't believe that AI is doing something that it's not doing. And although these reasoning chains can be helpful, as Ethan says, we need to really understand that they are not the absolute truth. They are not kind of the absolute diagnosis. So, yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And I think just to kind of add to that point, this tweet um, by Chomba Bupe is kind of supports kind of some of my thinking here. He says, I don't think it's insane given that language models learn to stitch coherent tokens but don't learn the underlying reality that generated the token sequences. Reality is literally saying these things are a waste of time and people still trying to force things. So I think the point there is LLMs, they predict tokens, they don't understand what they are saying. And when you have that at the foundation of your interaction with LLMs, I think you'll have more effective interactions. I think you'll have more honest interactions, at least from the human side, in the sense that you know what you're getting, and what you're getting isn't perfection, isn't absolute truth. It's an approximation, a prediction of what the truth is. Cool. Okay, we'll jump into the next topic. Yeah, okay. So this is something I'm quite excited about. Windsurf is an AI coding tool. It allows you to use AI as you're coding, and to some extent, with the agent within the platform, it codes for you in some ways. I've been using it for a while, and I really like it. It's probably my tool of choice, my preferred tool, and I would say that yeah, it's really good. What they've done is they've released their own family of models. So what we've been previously doing with Windsurf is you use a kind of foundational model from the market. So you'll use either you use a ChatGPT model, one of OpenAI's model, or you use one of Anthropic's model. Now Windsurf have their own models. To be fair, let me correct myself. They did have their own models before. Their own models weren't that good, but now they have kind of, I think, models that they really are really happy about, really proud to put their names behind. So let me just give you a bit of an introduction that they're giving. I'll definitely let you jump into the video. Go head over to Windsurf's Twitter account, and also their website has some details on the models. I think the only things I'll add are this is great to see. I think, as he said, the models that we have currently are coding focused, and that means that when it comes to things like rather than looking at specific lines of code, but the whole code base, they have struggled when it comes to things like working with databases or other kind of ancillary tools. It can be a bit tricky with the current models. So I'm really hopeful that this model will make things a lot better. I haven't used Windsurf since this announcement was made, so I'm looking forward to using it over the weekend and testing these out. Um, and I think on the other side, it's interesting that they are using specialist models. Obviously, companies like OpenAI and Anthropic are aiming to create generalist all-purpose models, and it'll be interesting to kind of see how the market plays both sides of this. So both the generalist models and the specialist models. It feels intuitive that specialist models will be useful in specialist use cases. If you have a model um, that is a software engineering specialist, why would you use a general model? Um, but in some cases, like we look at benchmarks, maybe in some cases the all-purpose generalist model will be better. So it's just something interesting to keep our eyes on as this space develops. Cool. Next up, we have. Okay, this is something I'm excited about. No, I haven't used it yet, but Alex is a AI coding platform specifically for use with Xcode. So Xcode is the tool platform that you use when you're coding iOS apps, and I coded an iOS app with Windsurf, and it was tricky. There was a lot of kind of back and forth. It looks like Alex is just a bit more specialist, as we were kind of talking about with Windsurf and the software engineering models. So Alex is a specialist coding tool for Xcode, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to looking at it. I think I mentioned either last week or the week before that. I think it was last week actually. Anthropic are in talks with Apple. That's what we've heard. So there may be a Apple tool that does what Alex does coming out. But I think Alex is definitely worth checking out. I remember coming across it really a couple of months ago, and I came across it again this week. So I'm looking forward to testing it out if I have a spare moment. But if anyone out there is wants to build an iOS app, I think Alex Codes is definitely a tool to check out. Cool. Okay, next we have. Oh, this is a good one. Okay, let's have a quick listen to Amjad. I think he's the CEO of Replit. Yeah, that's it. Cool. Okay, again, I'll encourage you to head over to Twitter or even Replit's website to get details on this. But suffice to say, the point being made is that, and I'm sure you've heard some of the stories, a lot of people have been vibe coding apps and deploying apps that are security nightmares. They're exposing all sorts of private keys, and I think even potentially user data is vulnerable to attack and to kind of theft, really. So it's really great to see Replit taking um, the initiative to build into their tools that safety that is required and that security that is required. So it's a really good sign. I think Replit's probably the first AI coding tool, AI coding platform that we've heard this kind of we've had this kind of released from, but I expect it fully from all of the others. Um, they obviously all have different priorities. We just saw Windsurfer focusing on building models that are specialist, but security has to be top of mind for all of these teams. So I do expect to see similar um, announcements and releases from teams um, in the near future. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we saw another one next week. So yeah, good sign, good development, and yeah, I think the only other thing I'll say is, as someone who is coding with these AI tools, I see it as an opportunity to learn. I want to better understand how to make my apps more secure. I want to better understand kind of best practices. And I hope that a key element of some of the tools that they're introducing is that kind of automation of it just does it and it makes your apps more secure, but also it teaches you what security is in the context of coding and helps you to kind of upskill and develop your knowledge in that way. So yeah, good, great work from Replit. Okay, next up, yeah, okay, so yeah, I think we might be transitioning into um, my kind of AI and work, AI and jobs segment. So yeah, let's have a listen to this. Okay, so yeah, that's quite a pronouncement, but I think from what we've seen AI coding tools really move forward leaps and bounds in the last year, if not even in the last 6 months. And so for someone to say that an AI tool could code at the level of a junior software engineer 24/7 within about a year or so, I don't think that's surprising. It's not surprising, but it might be concerning to many. I think when you think about what that means, the implications of that, that means potentially that a junior software engineer job will now not be available because the company has an AI that it can trust with those tasks. We're going to get on to AI and jobs market shortly, um, but I think I would encourage kind of computer science students and anyone kind of studying coding, hoping to get into the industry, to really, at least for now, persevere. I think I always use the pilot analogy, I'll probably repeat it today, but the pilot analogy that we do not let planes fly themselves and without a pilot, even though they can. Pilots are there to ensure safety, pilots are there to um, kind of be that last layer of defense. And so I think we're going to have something quite similar with AI. That's not to say that there may be fewer pilot jobs. You don't need, um, yeah, there might be fewer jobs for software engineers, for human software engineers, but I do think that there will be jobs. They'll be different in nature. There'll definitely be jobs where you are directly working with AI tools. And so mastering AI coding tools, I think, is definitely one thing to do, but also mastering your subject matter. The idea of a pilot is if the automations fail, the pilot can do the job that the automations were doing. And so when it comes to AI coding tools, it's not enough to know how to prompt well. You have to be kind of that last line of defense, as I said. So if AI coding tool fails, you should still be able to code the app. You should still be able to um, deliver the feature that the team needs, that the organization needs. So that's just something to kind of bear in mind as we continue in this conversation. Coolio. Okay. Okay, next up, we have just an announcement from Doji. I think I mentioned Doji last week. It's a really cool app that allows you to try on clothes with a realistic avatar of based on yourself. As I said, I am working on something very much in this space, and I definitely look forward to kind of talking a lot more about. I have this interest in avatars and identity. Um, so yeah, definitely keep an eye on Doji. They just raised 14 million. And I think I'm not one to kind of just celebrate raising money. But I think when great teams raise money and you see the potential for what they can build, that is super exciting. And I think Doji have so much potential. The app has so much potential, and so I'm excited that they have this money, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. Okay, next up. Cool. Okay, so this is another one of those CEOs going all in on AI announcements. So Will England just pivoted his 10 billion AUM hedge fund to go all in on AI with a Femwild email. We've seen these. I think I share one in every episode. I've shared one in every episode so far, and I'm sure in the coming weeks we'll get even more. Definitely encourage you to have a look. I think he was on Dan Shipper's show, so Dan Shipper actually interviewed him, and and so you can kind of definitely look at the show, watch the show, and see all about what he says. I think I'd raise this kind of in part in continuation of that conversation that I mentioned earlier around the impact AI is having, and will have on the jobs market. To the extent that all of these companies are saying there's a lot of work that AI can do, there is some level of them also saying this is work that we don't have to give to humans. And I think we can't deny that, and we shouldn't. And we have to think about what that means for us as people who work in these industries, as well as um, the future of these industries, and what we need to build. I think also it's interesting just to think about it from the perspective of what does it mean to build a company in the age of AI? What does it mean to have a culture in a company where you have a core team, a, potentially a smaller team, but a heavy reliance on AI? Yeah, what is that culture? And to be honest, maybe it's just small company culture as opposed to big company culture. If a company doesn't no longer has to scale to hundreds and thousands of employees, but can stay small, that's potentially a really positive thing for company culture, for the dynamics within the workplace, or not. It depends on kind of what your beliefs are about how humans work together. But yeah, this is going to impact that. So I think it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And I think there are some people who believe it can get really bad. So David Scott Patterson here says the transition to full unemployment will be fast. It will begin in 2028, and by 2030, everyone will be unemployed and receiving UBI. That is quite a statement. Um, I think this is the debate. The debate is AI taking all of the jobs versus AI empowering humans in some ways. I think there's some interesting concepts there. So I think we are going to see unemployment as a result of AI. We probably already have, and we have to assess the implications of that. UBI is an interesting idea. I think it's something that people need to think about and explore and think about the implications of. I don't think we're, how many years is that? 5 years away from it. I mean, it could happen, but I wouldn't say so. I think there'll be a lot more back and forth than David is um, predicting. I think we may have a very small, oh, not very small, a smaller jobs market. Um, I think there are more interesting, not more interesting, but there are interesting questions to ask about. I think there was a book I was looking up on Amazon about a post-work society, a society where maybe certain people don't have to work, but less so that. I'm thinking more so a society where there's different kinds of work. So I think I was thought experimenting yesterday and today around what does it mean for art to have a greater role in society if kind of the more bureaucratic or administrative labor is taken up by AI, does that mean that the creative industries can grow and flourish? Does that mean that there's more jobs in theatre, in music performance, live performances, in even kind of the visual arts and art festivals and things like that. If those things are just more prominent because we have more time to do them than before, those industries then have growth. Those industries then require jobs. A an AI can't set up a mic or a stage for an event. You need real humans to do that. Even if robots were a big key part of that, um, I think we have like 3D printed houses now, and you need humans in the mix even when you're 3D printing a house. So if if we are if we have a greater emphasis on the performing arts and people are working more in those industries, then there are jobs there. So I'm interested in, are we going to see a shift in jobs as opposed to kind of like mass unemployment or um, yeah, just yeah, mass unemployment. These are things that we need to discuss. But yeah, it's a really interesting conversation. Cool. Okay, this is another interesting post I came across. So yeah, Reed Southern says, if these ever actually catch on, it won't be long before society shuns these losers. No one will want to talk or hang out with people who could be secretly recording them at any time, to say nothing of it being sent to and used by Meta beyond dystopian. So I think just on this point, yeah, I have many thoughts. I think the first thought, it reminds us, he's referring to the Ray-Ban stories, the concept of always on AI slash AR, well, AI predominantly glasses, smart glasses. Um, and first thing I'll say is I remember almost the exact conversation back when Google Glass was a thing. People were not fans of being recorded, and that was one of the big oppositions to the technology. I think it was, to be honest, one of the things that stopped it in its tracks. So this is a objection that we have heard, both in this iteration of the technology and previous iterations. I think it's a valid point. I think what it really provoked in my mind was just that issue of privacy when it comes to AI and wearables and smart glasses. It's one thing for an individual to um, be willing to swap or exchange their privacy for the utility that a tool or a device offers, but it's quite another thing for the people around them, both people that they know and people that they don't know, to kind of make that exchange. And if we're honest, people who are just passing by someone wearing such glasses won't have consented. And so there's some important questions or conversations to be had around how do we maintain the privacy of strangers when using these devices. Um, and yeah, I wish I had an answer, but it's a question, it's a conversation that is starting and that we need to continue. Cool. Next up, the fun. Okay, it's pretty straightforward what we've seen there. We've seen a robot doing cleaning. I think, yeah, as the poster said there, this triggered quite a discussion about the robot's cleaning techniques and um, its approach to cleaning. But yeah, it's a really interesting video. I'm sure it's a prototype. I haven't done deep research into kind of where that's come from, but we've seen a lot of robotic startups, to be honest. So we cannot be very far away from this kind of utility. Um, Again, this is jobs. Essentially, as that poster insinuates, a minimum wage cleaning job could be taken by a robot now. That's kind of the message here. And I think the interesting question is, is that a bad thing? So, I think I know people who are passionate about cleaning. They believe in it. Um, they really believe in it. They enjoy it. And so I don't think we can assume that there are certain kinds of jobs that people just don't like, and there's a whole class of jobs that humanity would be happy to kind of give over to robots. I think there is, I would, I think that there are people who find joy in cleaning, who find joy in making spaces habitable and pleasurable for people. And for that work to be taken away from them is sad to think about. Obviously, this is not necessarily taking the jobs away from them. This is an option certain people will have, and for those who are passionate about the work, potentially, hopefully, they can stay in those jobs. It's kind of similar to um, kind of traditional physical artists and digital artists. Nobody forces traditional artists to use digital tools, but they have that option. And similarly, if someone presents a service of a human cleaner, they're perfectly entitled to do so, and they're not forced to use robots in order to do the cleaning. And there'll be people who want the former service, some people who want the latter service. And I think the market forces will be a really interesting element of what we see as we move forward with AI and robotics, because there will be some people who don't want a robot in their house, don't want the cameras that a robot requires, as we saw from kind of the Ray-Ban Stories example just gone. They won't want something recording their whole house as it cleans, and that will be a requirement. So yeah, it's just a really interesting example, and a really interesting first kind of spark of this conversation that we need to be having. Cool. Okay, yeah, this is again following up on something I did discuss last week around students using AI to um, write essays and to do their work, and teachers getting slightly frustrated about it. Some teachers using AI to mark the work, but in this case, a teacher actually leaving the profession because she didn't want to be engaging in this kind of confusion. And I think confusion is a word I'll use because I think we're at a confusing time for students and for the education system because, as I think I said last week, the education system has been questionable for some time now. We've have an education system that we have inherited from, um, I'd say, just post-industrial revolution, maybe even pre, um, but a time unlike our current digital age, a time when jobs were very different, a time when society was very different, and we have been very slow to reform the education system. We probably needed a full reform of the education system with the advent of the internet, but we didn't, and we made some changes and we did somewhat adapt, but I don't think there was enough of an analysis of what are we teaching children, why are we teaching them, and how might we need to teach them differently for the future that they will be embarking on. And so I can definitely empathize with a teacher who finds herself in a position where her students are not doing the work to a large extent, not doing the learning, but submitting things because that's essentially what education requires of them. It doesn't require them to learn, it just requires them to submit work or submit the right answers to the extent that they can. And so I think, as I said last week, we really probably need to take a close look at the assessments, the assessment system, and how we assess learning, and what we assess for, and and what we therefore optimize for. So yeah, definitely find Dorothea on Twitter or elsewhere. I'm sure she's on LinkedIn as well, and have a look at the article that she wrote. And yeah, share your thoughts with me or with her. Definitely, feel free to. And yeah, and the reason why I think this is such a kind of crucial debate and is that because it is debatable and because we don't necessarily have the empirical research to the level that we can kind of make a conclusive um, statement. And in relation to what Dorothea was kind of saying, yes, it's problematic for a student to get ChatGPT to write its essay, submit that essay, having done none of the analysis, none of the understanding. If you have never read Romeo and Juliet and you submit an essay on Romeo and Juliet that ChatGPT wrote, what really is the point of the whole exercise? It renders it pointless. Um, but then on the other hand, where a student does actively engage with the learning process, so they're using ChatGPT to teach themselves. So rather than just producing the essay, maybe that student is having a discussion with ChatGPT about the themes of Romeo and Juliet. Um, Maybe that student is kind of presenting their ideas to ChatGPT and getting feedback and using that kind of back and forth in order to write the essay. That is a positive and a fruitful and an educational use of ChatGPT or any of these tools or any of these AI tools in order to learn. And there has been some level of analysis to say that if ChatGPT, no, the use of ChatGPT and potentially other AI tools can have a positive impact on learning performance, learning perception, and higher order thinking. And this is definitely something I want to dig into and potentially produce some content around in the future. But I, I really do think that AI can make us smarter. I think AI can personalize learning to the extent that what the AI is optimizing for is your learning. And if we can develop that virtuous cycle where the AI is essentially teaching you and expanding your mind and helping you to think, not thinking for you, being the key, I think that can be really positive. I think the challenge is how do we incentivize students to do that rather than the other thing, which is just using AI to to provide them with answers. But yeah, we'll definitely continue that discussion in future episodes. Next up, oh yeah, and this is just kind of again another side of that debate. So, is it helping? Is it harming? Um, there are many different views, and yeah, the debate will continue. Cool. Next up, we have oh gosh, yeah, a very troubling story. So, on Twitter in the last couple of days, some users have found that when they are asking Grok, which is X's, formerly Twitter, but X's AI that's embedded into Twitter, when they're asking it any questions about any topic, it would randomly insert kind of the affirmative that there is a white genocide happening in South Africa. So you see that it's inserting this into completely unrelated chats. These chats were not asking anything about South Africa, about genocide, about anything of the sort. They were asking questions about the things that the users were interested in, and it would just bring white genocide into the conversation. What it looks like is that Grok was hard coded to accept white genocide as real, and the way it was hard coded was not nuanced enough. It wasn't subtle enough. It just made it speak about white genocide in every situation. Um, I think even beyond this specific scenario, what's so worrying about this is this idea that creators of AI could potentially influence the output of the models um, for the purposes of propaganda. So I think I said in last week's episode, AIs are definitely not without bias, and I think we should engage with them as such. Um, and so, even a seemingly innocuous answer to a question, even or an innocuous generation of an image, we need to kind of have in the back of our minds that there are influences on this output that maybe biased. Maybe I can see them, maybe I can't, but they're likely to be there. We've seen bias very blatantly here because it was hard coded in. But if that bias isn't hard coded, but it's somewhere in the data set, somewhere a lot further beneath the surface than this very obvious example, it'll be harder to spot. So, yeah, I think it really just buttresses the point that AI is not without bias, and we have to be a lot better at understanding the nature of bias and how it can show up in different facets of life that AI is kind of supporting us in engaging with. Um, yeah, extremely worrying, but I think it's a good kind of warning for all of us about how we should engage with these tools. Okay, up next. So this is something I have to do. Yeah. So basically, the U.S. Copyright Office released. I think it was a what's the word I'm looking for? A preview of their generative AI training publication. So you see, there's a pre-publication version um, of part three. I think the whole publication is going to be released soon, but they released part three um, early because there were so many questions about it. And it was received very well by the creative community in particular because it effectively concluded that the use of copyrighted works is not fair use when um, copyrighted works in the training of AI is not fair use when that AI is subsequently used for commercial purposes. And this is something that artists and creatives have wanted for have wanted to kind of be very explicitly stated, and so it's seen as a really positive move by that community. And I think it makes a lot of sense. If we were to take two novels, if we were to take two novels and create something based on them, there would be very obvious kind of copyright implications. Um, there would be very what's the word I'm looking for? Very obvious copyright implications. You've taken these two works and you've created this third work based on those two works. It's kind of like you're using the initial copyright. But when it's 2 million, the claim of some of the companies is that it's not possible to kind of claim copyright in those scenarios. And what we're seeing here from the US Copyright Office is that it is, and that we need to build out the frameworks and the kind of the pipelines to ensure that essentially people are fairly compensated, that we do not breach people's copyrights without kind of fairness being at play. So this was received really well. The thing is, one second, sorry everyone. Cool. Okay. So what we've seen following up the release of that report was the US firings in the US Copyright Office. Now there's a lot of concern around this movement. Um, it's hard to say, at least from my understanding of the situation, whether the firings and the release of the report were related. But I think some people do feel that the executive branch um, did not like the report and therefore took action. Yeah, this is definitely a developing story. We're seeing copyright conversations happen in many countries, and they are important conversations. The big tech companies have a stake in this conversation, but as do all of the creators, the people who own the copyrighted works that were used for training AI models, and as do we as the general public. I think it's kind of the onus is on me, and I'm sorry that I haven't um, researched this as deep enough. But I think the onus is on all of us to really kind of ensure that we're informed um, on these issues. These are very big issues. I don't know if it was in the UK or the US, but there was um, a proposal. I think it was in the US, a proposal that I think it's like a 10-year, almost like a 10-year moratorium on any kind of conversation around the use of copyrighted works and the training of AI. Apologies if I've got that wrong, but it was something of that kind, and I think it's not really acceptable for those conversations to happen outside of the public kind of domain. We all need to be thinking about and engaging in this conversation because it does affect all of us. So yeah, definitely we'll do a bit more digging into that, and hopefully, um, yeah, I'll do hopefully an extended video on that at some point. This is an interesting one, slightly confusing, but I'll definitely kind of just jump into it. So Max Tegmark and I think probably his organization have come up with something called a Compton constant. And the Compton constant is a mathematical estimation of the probability that a super intelligence will take over the Earth. And essentially, it's being applied to the current state of AI tools. And so you can go ahead and have a look at Max and how his organization has made that calculation, and you can um, yeah, look into it yourself and share your thoughts. But people have shared their thoughts, and Ewan Morrison being one of them, um, effectively saying that the Compton constant is essentially hype, and it's not really a real thing. In essence, that LLMs themselves will not lead to super intelligence, as does Tom Bahir as well. He says the same thing, that AI is merely prediction. It's token prediction. Token prediction can't take over the world, being his argument here, which I think I can definitely I definitely probably would sway more to that side. I think, and I'm just probably more so a cautious person by nature. The thing we need to keep our eye on is what other AI technologies are out there. We have LLMs, but to the extent that we have models that are able to kind of operate more so in the real world, so take in more data and process real world data as opposed to process um, just words, um, then maybe we have an issue. And also, to the pilot analogy that I always use and that I used earlier today, what are we giving AI control over, and what are the human kind of backstops to that control and oversight? Maybe it's a better word for that control. To the extent that we have that oversight, to the extent that AI is not actually really operating in the real world, we're probably a lot further away than to require the constant, to be perfectly honest, and to have the level of concern I think Max is kind of probably drumming up, if I can put that word for want of a better term. So yeah, it's an interesting debate. It's more so a sidebar. Cool. Okay, yeah. Coming up to the end, there's just a couple more stories left. So yeah, as Ewan says here, We can't escape grief or loneliness with AI avatars. We are replacing human connection with a delusion. My article on an expanding market for AI surrogates in relationships, therapy, and mourning. Pretty good essay or article. I've read some of it. I haven't finished reading it, but from what I read, it was really interesting. Um, and yeah, it makes sense that it's in Psychology Today because I think the point is that AI could take some people down a dangerous road. If you are having emotional issues in real life, having emotional issues regarding your interaction with other human beings, AIs don't don't necessarily, at least in their current form, and potentially in their form for a long time because they're not human. But AIs don't necessarily solve those problems. They essentially put a band-aid on the problem, or they allow you to ignore the problem. So I'll try and give a very basic, not a great example, but I'll give an example. If you have, let's say, a young child who is not making friends at school, and you give them an AI, and that AI is their best friend. The AI understands them. The AI listens to them. The AI um, is a surrogate for a friend. You don't solve the problem of that child not being able to make friends at school. That child may utilize the tools it's learned engaging with the AI, if the AI is actually optimized for that, to engage with real people. But if that child is never incentivized to learn how to engage with real people because the AI gives them a way out effectively, where does that really leave us? And I think that's kind of one of the core messages from Ewan's article. Yeah, definitely give it a read and share your thoughts. Okay, this is a just some excerpts from the Bloomberg article on the AI's impact or AI's water needs and thus the impact of AI on the environment. I definitely encourage people to give it a read. Um, yeah, yeah. I think as the kind of title of the article insinuates, there's an AI boom. AI is getting a lot of attention and a lot of funding, and it's getting a lot of funding on the basis that it's going to be very lucrative, very important in the future. Um, and sometimes that kind of boom, that hype, for want of a better term, can make people do things they would not normally do, or more so ignore things that might kind of otherwise be raised in importance. And I think that's potentially what we have to be mindful of here. Um, I'm kind of hoping to do some podcast episodes on some of these issues that I've been looking at every week and discussing here on the show. I want to bring in some experts because I think my understanding of environmental issues is that we already have a slight water crisis before we even kind of start thinking about um, what level of crisis we may get into because of AI. And I'm definitely a optimist on many levels, but also a realist. And I think the realist part of my brain is solution orientated. And I just feel that there must be solutions and that we need to focus on solving these problems. Um, a concerted effort. It's it's not the shiny toy. It's the foundation that enables us to actually have toys or have anything in this life. So, yeah, definitely take a look at the article. It's in Bloomberg. Um, and yeah, let me know what you think. Cool. Okay, got some words from the Pope on AI. I'll give them a quick read. So So the Pope said, I chose to take the name Leo the 14th. There are different reasons for this, but mainly because Pope Leo the 13th, in his historic encyclical Rerum Novarum, addressed a social question in the context of the first great industrial revolution. In our own day, the Church offers to everyone a treasury of her social teaching in response to another industrial revolution and to developments in the field of artificial intelligence that pose new challenges for the defense of human dignity, justice, and labor. Um, I'm actually really happy that the Pope has spoken up on this, as is Gary Marcus, who tweeted this out, because I think it's really important for all people to be aware that this is a really important thing that's happening in the world, even if they're not using AI tools at all, even if they're not actively engaging in the space, their lives and the lives of their children and the lives of the people they care about will be impacted by this technology. And I just always feel that if something is going to have such an impact, we should all have a role to play in how it's being built and the policy that kind of governs and determines how it's built. Um, yeah, democracy is hard in these kind of circumstances because you can't be passive with these. It's not a case of you can vote for someone um, and then wait 4 years before you engage again. This kind of social development requires active participation in week to week democratic processes, not 4 year term democratic processes, not just 4 year term democratic processes. So I think someone like the Pope speaking up on this and with the level of reach that his words have and the people who are really invested in his words and really pay attention to his words, it's really good that he is raising this to their attention. That's what I'll say with that. Cool. Just a couple more things. These are kind of, I always do kind of a bit of further reading at the end of these shows. And so this is further reading for you and for me. Um, what are we losing by offloading our thinking to AI? This is a question that's come up several times in our discussions, and so I look forward to reading that from the New Yorker. Um, yeah, it's a key question. I think I've spoken about it at length. Spoken about it in relation to languages last week, talking about if AI can translate everything for us. Does that mean we never learn Latin? We never learn French? We never learn Yoruba? We never learn Sosa? Like that is a loss, and we really need to think about whether that is a loss that we want to make as a society. And last but not least, um, this is a concept I'm interested in, so I'm just going to share it with you and then we'll probably come to an end. That is a very attractive proposition to me. I think, yeah, as he said, and I think this is one of the concepts that I've been playing with. The rise of AI is leading to the democratization of a lot of things, and one of them being the democratization of personal assistance. As he says, previously only the richest people could have their words dictate their word could dictate and have their words transcribed, or have kind of 24/7 assistance to do the things that they need to do, whether it's conducting research, writing things, and so on. And to the extent that someone is using AI to assist them as opposed to do stuff for them when it comes to kind of creative output, or yeah, any kind of creative output, from speeches to artwork to visual artwork. I think this is a really, really exciting time. Um, yeah, I think it's really exciting. I think there are debates to be had around it, but yeah, it kind of, in my head, it links back to kind of the conversation we had around um, AI and employment slash unemployment. AI taking certain jobs, or robots taking certain jobs. In cases like this, AI is not replacing a job. AI is enabling and empowering. The person who could not afford an assistant of this type now has one in AI. That is something that wasn't possible, that is made possible by AI. And I think those kind of use cases are really exciting. Those kind of use cases, for me, are a very persuasive argument for this technology. And so, where we have some of the more negative, um, or no, not more negative, but more kind of the cons or the arguments against some of the uses of this technology, I think those are very much pros and positive uses of the technology. So yeah, have a look. This is a video on the EO YouTube channel, How Stanford Teaches AI-Powered Creativity in Just 13 Minutes, with Jeremy Utley. Um, yeah, you can see he's very excited about it. I'm quite excited about it as well. But I think I am very excited about technology, but also very willing to debate both the positive and negative aspects of it. So please do um, let me know your thoughts. Really excited to keep developing the show, and thank you to anyone who's watching right now. This is kind of the third episode. It's very much the beginning. You probably are not seeing it fully yet, but I'm doing a lot of work on the back end to improve my processes and to hopefully eventually improve the production of the show. So anyone who's here from day 3 or day 1, thank you for being here, and I am excited to make this even better going forward. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the show. Um, Feedback, comments, always welcome. Um, I obviously am really engaged and excited about a lot of this technology, always happy to discuss. So if you want to drop me lines, send me a tweet, a comment on LinkedIn, please feel free, or comment on YouTube, please feel free to do so. And I will see you again next week.